Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to another video. If you're new here, my name is Beav Brodie, and if you've been watching for a while, you'll remember when I went and bought the NSX back in December. I owe you guys a little bit of a tour of this car. I haven't really shown you around. I've talked about it a few times. So today I want to show you around the car, show you some of the things that need to be done to it, some of the plans that I have for it, and things like that. So let's get started. All right, where do we start? Let's start with the outside of the car. So I've already changed the wheels. If you guys remember when we first showed you the NSX, it had these different wheels. It had aftermarket wheels on it. I took those off almost immediately and put these on. These wheels are from Science of Speed, and they're a wider wheel. They're a more aggressive offset. They're bigger than factory, but they look like the original wheel, so it just looks correct for the car. It looks super nice, super clean. Like the outside of the car is mostly stock. Now it does have aftermarket suspension on it. It's got Tane coilover suspension on it. It is lowered, which is nice. But the nice thing about the NSX is like it's super tiny and short, but and even being lowered, it has really good ground clearance. So it's not super low. I have yet to scrape it on anything or speed bump issues or any of that kind of stuff that you would normally associate with on a lowered car. Have had zero of those problems because thankfully it's got good ground clearance even though it's super short. So that's a bonus. It's got an aftermarket exhaust system on it. It's got an ARC full titanium exhaust system on it. We'll put it up on the lift. I'll show you that stuff here in a little bit. And then otherwise the rest of the car outside is mostly stock. It's the inside of the car is when we start to have problems. Now you saw in the thumbnail, it's all ripped apart and there's a problem. And that's not because anybody broke into it or tried to steal anything. I actually took it apart because this thing had a ton of stereo equipment in it and found this rat's nest of stuff. And the reason I pulled it apart is because when I went and test drove this car, it took us 45 minutes to get it to play music before. It's got all this aftermarket stereo equipment in it, and I had an iPad mounted to the dash that went through the radio, and then there's another controller for an equalizer, and then it's got amps in the trunk and subs and the subwoofer, because this thing doesn't have a proper trunk because the engine's in the back of it. The subwoofer mounts in the floorboard of the passenger side, so the passenger has to sit with their feet on this sub and their knees are in their chest. It's very uncomfortable. It's not practical. I want to take this thing back to as original as I can while still having a few aftermarket touches that make sense, that are very tasteful aftermarket accessories. So that's what I'm working towards. The other part of why I'm starting to do this now is because I'm going to a car show in a couple of weeks called Radwood, and Radwood is super rad. It's like an 80s and 90s only car show event, and everything about it is 80s and 90s, so I'm super pumped for that. So I wanted to get a few things in place and cleaned up on the car before I took it there, and that's where we ran into this problem. Now, restoring cars isn't anything new to me. Obviously, if you've known me for a long time, you'd know that. I mean, that's why I have this full shop. So in my normal business, if you're new here, my normal business is tactical baby gear now, and it's an e-commerce business, and a lot of the content on this channel is around marketing and e-commerce and that sort of thing. But I come from a background of cars. Like, I've had plenty of cars in magazines, and we set a world record with the 1967 Volkswagen bus at Barrett-Jackson a couple years ago. I've done a lot of stuff. So this is nothing new to me. We're gonna get this thing squared away, no problem. And you guys are gonna help me do it. I almost forgot to show you the engine. It's like the most important part. So the motor, like I said, is mostly stock, and it's in the back of the car. So I'll lift up this hatch. This thing is, the sun has beat this thing up, so this is gonna have to get fixed at some point. I'm probably going to, if I can find a replacement, I'll replace it. Otherwise, I'm gonna try to refinish it somehow. And this car is a Target top, so you'll see there's no top on it. And the top gets stored underneath here in this lid. And then below that is the engine compartment. So mostly stock, 74,000 miles on it. It's got a HKS intake on it, which is nicely paired with that titanium exhaust system. And then it's got this aftermarket strut bar right here, this big silver bar right there. But that's also where the original hood like prop rod thing mounted to, which I don't have anymore. So it's supposed to go from like about here up to there to hold that up so I don't have to. So at some point I've got to build something for that because I do want to keep that strut bar in here. Let me show you the mess that we're dealing with here. So I've already removed and uninstalled a lot of things. I may have a photo. If I have a photo, you'll seeing it right now. But it was a hot mess. So I started cutting things out and cutting things out. And what is this and where does that go? They had really expensive equipment in this car, and they put in zero effort into installing it, it seems like, which is super unfortunate, but that's okay. We're gonna fix it. So I started cutting things out, and this is kind of where I got. It's got a carbon fiber center console for it, and it's just like a rat's nest of wiring. And again, I've removed a lot of stuff, but it was just like butt connectors on top of butt connectors on top of butt connectors, going to all kinds of aftermarket stuff that just isn't necessary. So I'm gonna finish cutting some stuff out. I've got some equipment coming in the mail, I think maybe today. So I'm gonna put like a nice clean doubled in radio, touchscreen radio back in this car, which doesn't look super out of place in this car. It's gonna be far more modern than the rest of the car, but the car is so timeless and almost futuristic looking anyways that it's gonna look very clean and simple, and I'll be good with that. Now it also had this aftermarket carbon fiber center console piece that goes in here, which is super expensive. This thing's like 1,500 bucks or something, and it's already cut out for the doubled in radio, which is nice because the factory radio had, like, this thing was rounded out and the knobs were in there, and I almost wanted a factory radio for this thing again, but they're like 12 or 1,500 bucks for a used old radio that's a tape player only, and I still want to be able to like stream Bluetooth through my phone and have some of those like modern luxuries while driving this car. But honestly, I don't really drive, I don't listen to the radio in this car much at all anyways, but I still want those capabilities and functionality of it for the trip I'm going to take is 5 hours. I'm going to want to listen to something, whether it's music or podcast or whatever. So I'm going to keep a few of these modern touches. We got to fix a few of the little things along the way. The other thing that we're going to do today that I already have is some wheel spacers. Even though these wheels that I got have a more aggressive offset, they're still like, I want them flush with the fender, man. Like you can see here, like I've got some room to pull that wheel out towards the edge a little bit. So I want to bring that out. I got some 15mm spacers. I want to bring that wheel out to the edge of that fender a little bit more. Same with the rear. You can see I've got some room to bring that wheel out nice and flush there. So that's what we're doing. Sorry for the long intro, but now you've gotten a quick tour of the car, and that's the plans for it. That's what we're going to do with it. Let's get started. Now, the other thing I've got to do real quick is I want to mock this up. I'm concerned that 15mm might be a little bit too tight to the edge of the fender, and then when the wheel compresses and goes up with suspension, it may hit the fender. So I'm going to do a few things to mock it up first to make sure I'm not going to have any issues, and then we'll do the final install. Alright, now the wheel spacers that I'm using are actually an adapter because the studs on my car aren't going to be long enough for a big spacer. So I'm going to bolt this adapter on. I'll let you look at it. These are like a really shallow lug nut that will fit down inside of here. Now the wheel, thankfully, the offset of the bolt pattern, there's a big indentation to allow the factory stud to kind of go into the back side of the wheel without protruding and causing any fitment issues. So we're gonna go bolt this on and then bolt the wheel onto this, and then we're gonna test the fitment and make sure that we're not gonna have any issues with the tire hitting the rear quarter panel when it compresses and things of that nature. So this is just a huge experiment. I'm hopeful that this is gonna work because I really want it to work, because I think it'll look a lot better, and if it doesn't, you can't say we didn't try. The other thing about these, and the reason I'm using one like this, is that it's HubCentric. So this will fit over the factory center bore right here, and then it has another center bore right here, the exact same diameter, so the wheel will sit nice and tight on that HubCentric ring, keeping it nice and concentric and centered, taking some force off of the lug nuts, etc. Thankfully, I've got this special socket that I like. You saw me using a chrome socket taking the wheel off because it's, you know, a tight area, a big impact socket. You have a chance of damaging the wheel. And this is a chrome socket that I actually machined down. You can see from here to here for aftermarket wheels, because a lot of times you just need, there's like no space even with this. Like I wouldn't be able to tighten these down with a normal socket. So that sucks for people that don't have the ability to machine their own tools like I do. All right, now you can see I've got the wheel adapter on here. So it's bolted on here on the original stud. It has a new set of studs, and it's gonna space the wheel off about 15 millimeters. Now, like I was saying, on the back side of the wheel, let me show you this. It's machined out in the offset of the original, so that stud will have space to go through here, and I won't have to cut the stud, trim it, or anything like that. We should just be able to bolt this on and see how it's gonna work. And then if it works, I'll take this back off, and I'll probably put a little bit of Loctite on these and then give them a final torque, and then we'll be good to go. I don't know, you guys. This already looks like it's sticking out a little too far, but the good news is when the suspension goes up, it also tilts in a little bit, which is why when you lower a car, you get really bad negative camber, so it might come up. What do you think, Matt? You think that's gonna go up in there?
I don't know, man.
That's gonna be, like, look at this. That looks like that's not going to work. I don't know. It's like borderline. Like I feel like 12, 13 millimeters would have been great. You tell me what you think. I'll show you before and after. So that's how flush the wheel sits with the body now. Right, this was before, this is the other side. Let's see, it just, the wheel sits in there. I don't know. It's almost too much, but it looks aggressive and like angry and This is what it looks like from the front. I haven't done the front wheel yet, but the back wheel, look at the back wheel. I don't know. I think I'm just gonna have to leave it on there throughout the rest of the day as I work and do some stuff over the rest of the interior stuff, and just keep staring at it and see. Maybe I'll put the other side on, and then I'm gonna do the front wheels as well. I'm still waiting on those to come in. But anyways, that's the current situation with the NSX. I hope you guys enjoyed this style of a video, which is a new video for me on this channel about cars, something I've never really done a lot of on this channel. But I did have the intention and hopes to, which is why the intro even says custom cars. But then I sold all the stuff. I don't work on cars anymore. And now we got something cool to play with. So there'll be more of this stuff coming around the NSX and a few other projects, I think. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more of this. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.